Welcome back. We are back. We as in me. I'm back. Kendra Carter with All God's Grace. Listen, I tried to get the neon to dim. Turns out I don't have a dimmer, so this is what we're working with. But tonight we are diving in to podcast number 6, and I cannot wait to share with you what God has laid on my heart. And I'm excited. I'm excited about it. So there are 2 verses that have been sitting with me this season, getting all my papers ready. But I keep my eyes always on the Lord. I will not be shaken. That is Psalms 16:8. And unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. That's Psalms 127:1. And I do think the theme of my past season has been Psalms. I feel like the last several verses I've shared have all been from there, so much that I was so excited one day I called it Palms. So anyway, I didn't at the time fully understand why those verses felt so heavy for me or resonated so loudly with me until recently, because I thought I was resting. And it turns out I was simply rebuilding. Thanks everybody for tuning into this episode. I don't know how long we'll be today. In truth, only the Lord knows, but I want to start this podcast by digging into the weight of my last season and really where it struck me by surprise. Basically, on December 22nd, I had gotten all of my real estate deals in contract. A lot of you are here on this podcast because of my real estate business, and you probably found me from that page. But if you don't know, I'm a realtor here in Central Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. And in real estate, you can have boundaries, right? In every job, you can have boundaries. But in a sales job, when you are trying to ramp up, you really can't rest. Rest equals loss of opportunity. And since 2021, I doubled my business year over year to the point where my team and I closed nearly 15 million in volume in 2025. That's fantastic. But I think what happened on December 22nd is, you know, the feeling the day before you leave for a vacation. I don't know. I guess I won't speak for anyone else, but the day before I leave for vacation, I'm like done. I want no more emails, no more calls. I'm already pieced out. I'm already on vacation. And it was so weird because that's the feeling that I had on December 22nd. And I remember it plain as day. I don't know what we had, maybe 4 or 5 listings, several buyers. I think we closed 7 that month properties. And it was just like my entire nervous system just like went into rest mode. I had a property that was really, really struggling on the market, and we pulled it off the market. So literally everything I had in real estate, my buyers were taking a break because of the winter that we had. I was a loss for words for that snowstorm, that big snowstorm that we had. But my brain just said rest. And at the time, I was just so confused because, again, in real estate, any sales job, the more you rest, the more you see the lack of the fruits of your labor in the following months. So since 2021, I know I've been sharing a lot on my Instagram. I've been studying for my broker's license. I actually started studying for that last February and February 7th. So we're March. It's been over a year that I've been studying for my broker's license. And if you follow my Instagram page, you will know that I failed. I failed the state portion and I am scheduled for Friday. So I'll drop this tomorrow. That's a Tuesday. So what, 3 days from now, 4 days from now, I'm taking the exam again. Wish me luck. I don't want to take it again. But since 2021, doubled my sales year after year. I think 2021 I sold 3 million and then 4.5 million. I know that's not doubled. But it just kept going up. And obviously now from 3 million to 15 million, we're cooking. But here's what's crazy. The average realtor sells 1 house per year. I mean, that's bananas. But I mention that because I started a team a couple years ago, and I started a team because I have a deep passion for coaching, for training. I mean, I came from the personal training world, nutrition, Pilates, yoga, group fitness. I love being in front of people and training and teaching. It's just a deep-seated passion of mine. So what happened was my mentor, Tim Reel, I know a lot of my sphere knows him, but he was my coach. And one of the first pieces of advice he gave me when starting my own team, I mean, I see him in my head even now saying it. He says, "Kendra, stay away from the newbies. Don't hire the newbies." And I always fight him on this because I'm like, Tim, you took me on. You took me on as a newbie. But when he took me on, I had already struggled for a year in real estate with zero transactions, zero sales. But anyway, bringing it full circle to the average realtor sells one per year. I've had 5 males now. I'm not being sexist, but 5 males on my team come and go. And I have poured a lot into each one of those individuals to try and help them get up and running. I was buying leads, doing weekly team meetings. I mean, all of the things, pouring my heart and soul into helping build other people's businesses. And I love that. I don't have regrets about those guys leaving the business. I wish them well. Everything was fantastic. I still check in with them here and there. I still have a listing with one of them right now. So everything was good there, but I just hustled so stinking hard, so hard since 2021. I mean, I was ridiculed by my family members. Put down your phone. I have my 10-year-old and my 5-year-old saying, Mom, get off your phone, which I don't know if there's anything bigger that irks me than that. But what has happened now, and I'm one of the newbies in real estate that came before the real estate frenzy, 3% interest rates when literally a sloth could sell a house. I mean, it took nothing. FSBOs were for sale by owners were crazy. You could price it high, $1 million, and you'll get multiple offers. It was insane. Anybody could sell a house. New, veteran, whatever. Anybody could sell a house. So that was 4 or 5 years ago. Well, now what we're seeing in real estate, and I promise I'm bringing this all back, but this is what brought on this new season I'm in, which is the whole point of this podcast. But what this brought on was this weird gray area. It probably started a year ago where interest rates started to shift, inventory started to go up post lawsuit where seller commissions they were always negotiable, but it became more of a forefront conversation, which everyone should have been having beforehand. But at any rate, the last several months have been the wild, wild west. I mean, we've even used that vernacular at my brokerage meetings at the Columbus Board of Realtors. Like, I have heard the wild, wild west ever since the lawsuit happened and interest rates shot up and then went back down. Basically, what was really easy before, selling a house, putting a sign in the yard, you could go with any realtor and it would sell. But it's not like that anymore. And it takes strategy, it takes experience and or education and or resourcefulness. But when my brain shifted from that December 22nd, it was the rest from all of that, because the wild, wild west of real estate here in Central Ohio, not a lot of other markets are like us. There are other markets in the Carolinas, in the state of Delaware, in Florida. And I'm mentioning those specifically because I have buyers working with referral agents in those states, but they're heavy buyer markets, meaning you can't sell anything because buyers, they don't want it. There's tons of options. There's too many options. But we're not seeing that in Columbus, Ohio. So it is a lot more work and you don't know who you're working. So me as an agent, and again, I was a new agent once too, and I knew where to go to get the answers to my questions. I had a great support team with my office, Keller Williams Consultants. But if a newer agent or a seasoned agent with a lack of experience doesn't know where to go to get the information, I'm trying to negotiate with that person. And quick, seamless, strategic sales can go very awry if both agents are not collaborating together. So December 22nd, I was like, I needed the breather. And again, I thought this was rest. I thought this was my brain and my body just shutting down. And it was almost automatic. So December 22nd, obviously, Santa comes on December 25th, and it was family. I was cooking more dinners, spending more times with the kids. The kids were off school. Everything was inside the four walls of my house, my whole world. And I am a homebody. I joke all the time that I'm sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and that's what I like to wear every single day, which is funny because this was also a season where my house wasn't very clean because I was in the gym, which is in my basement, or with my kids, or cooking, but not cleaning. Definitely not cleaning. But this was a mind game for me because I did spend so many years grinding, like hitting the pavement. The next transaction leads to the next one, and the next buyer leads to the next seller, and the next seller, and everything was just a forward motion. Nothing was forward motion, stop, forward motion, stop. Everything was just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and so forth. And what I learned is I think that high capacity women mislabel seasons. If we're not pushing, we assume we're slipping. And if we're quieter, we assume we're shrinking. But I started to feel this growth. I was not shrinking at all. In fact, I was redirecting. I also noticed something very, very uncomfortable during this time. So we're talking right after Christmas. There was heavy cultural content. And I don't, I'm not really good at social media. I feel like I post enough to be authentic. Sometimes I don't want to. I could argue that I don't want to be filming this podcast right now, but I show up for my business. But I will say there is a significant gap in the time that I spend on social media for scrolling, personal entertainment. And what I spend on it for work is very imbalanced. And what I noticed was the heavy cultural content was really, really starting to sit with me, and not just sit with me, but weigh me down. There was, I mean, everything at this point. We've got the war overseas, the bombings in Iran that's in all of the countries surrounding Iran. There's still Candace Owens talking about Charlie Kirk. There's still ice. Now you've got people speaking out about ChatGPT because who the brand supports. Then the Olympics were even politicized. And the problem that I was having was I was letting all of those things affect my nervous system, and they were not things that were affecting my life, but they were in my brain and my algorithm. So every time I opened my phone, that's what I was seeing, this heavy cultural content. And I wasn't informed. I was agitated. I could feel it in my body, the tension. And again, I was letting things that have nothing to do with me dictate my peace. And it took me a moment to realize this and to put it together. But I realized that I can care about the truth without marinating in the chaos. So I pulled back from social media. And I didn't think I was stepping away from my job, but it was this natural transition from December 22nd, having that feeling of rest, and then this heaviness of the world. It wasn't just social media, it was the news. We regularly watch several different channels at our house. We family members on all sides of the political spectrum, and we always listen because that's what we do. We just try to stay informed on what all sides of the all sides of everything is. But this pulling back from social media obviously wasn't because I didn't care. And it obviously wasn't because I was disengaged, but because peace is also stewardship. And significant calling requires significant training. And sometimes that training is discipline of attention. And all of these things were taking my attention. And it's weird because the season of rest helped me pour more into my family, but it also gave me this void that I apparently filled with these cultural and worldly things that pulled me away from still being present with myself. So, in the midst of all of this, real estate was still going bananas. It took maybe a couple weeks off. But I had a very traumatic I say traumatic because it was. I actually think this was the prompt of my rest, but I had a property deal just so many showings, 51 showings, no offers. We finally got 4 offers, and it just one thing after another. We had 3 people terminate in 4 weeks. And my client was so frustrated. I was fired twice, and I kept coming back, and I just kept saying, "Hey, you know, I have this idea, or what about this idea? And what about this idea?" And I really felt like, they say that God doesn't test you, but he's with you throughout all of the things. And I just dug my heels into the ground and I said, we have to give this transaction to God. And I literally prayed with my client and I said, if this is meant to be, that this will happen. And for whatever reason, it's not happening for us. And maybe we haven't given it to God. And that's when we got the 4 offers. Absolute insanity. I mean, you couldn't make it up. He had also spoken to his preacher and I don't think he said he cried in his arms, but he said they embraced and he prayed about it. But I think this was another moment where this idea of rest and slowing down and not listening to the noise really got to me. And when I was prepping for this podcast, this phrase popped up and it said, "Peace doesn't mean the storm stops. It means I don't become the storm." And I love that because this client, when he fired me the second time, I came back again and I said, "Listen, I have this idea." And he just said, "Kendra, I feel like I am family now, but I just talked to him the other day and I said, once this is all over, we're going to have to schedule lunches so that we continue to hang out because this has been almost a year now of our courtship, our real estate life together. And yeah, it's just been crazy. The quietness that I have found has helped me remain calm, strategic, and supportive. And I think a lot of that came from this season of really putting my head down into the Bible, into my Bible app, because I spend more time on my Bible app than in my paper Bible, which I want to fix this month. But I think a lot of that has helped me be anchored. And I think the more anchored I have become, especially in this season, the more I've been able to discern and make choices that are in alignment with what God wants for me. Now is a good time to pause to remind you of our 2 sponsors for today's episode. Our first sponsor, Alec Moore, licensed and registered dietitian with Nutrition Collaborative. I can't say enough about Alec and his company. I've been working with him, I think I mentioned to my husband, for almost 7 years now. But he helps my husband, myself, just manage our day-to-day habits, including our nutrition and our exercise regimen, from our supplement stack to our stress relief habits, just to keep us steady. So if you want information on how to inquire about coaching with Alec Moore, follow the show notes to the bottom for those links. Our second sponsor for today's episode is a little bit hilarious. It is me, the Carter Group at Keller Williams Consultants Realty. And the main reason that I am a sponsor today is because I am personally out of fundraising money and I have to dip into my real estate funds to pay for my podcast. Because if you heard my statistics at the beginning of today's episode, I was hoping to be at 1,000 listening hours at March, and we're at 75. So please like, share, and comment. And back to the episode. So back to prepping for this podcast. For all of the podcasts so far, I have just prayed on it because this podcast wasn't a me thing. I had talked about it with my neighbor, but it never came to fruition. And I just thought, it's not meant to be. But the more that I prayed on it, the more the calling became louder. And if you listen to episode 1, you heard that Ella from Optico, my production company, reached out. I feel like these podcasts have all been divine intervention because at the very beginning, I talked to my friend, ChatGPT, and we scripted out a whole season. Topics that I felt resonated with me, that I felt were important and relevant for my audience. And none of those have happened. None of them. And I always have. It's funny because my dietitian and my husband know this, and maybe my mom. I feel bad for my dietitian, but they know that the days leading up to my podcast, a few things happen. I go into a panic. I do a lot of self-tanner, and you can't talk to me without hearing about the podcast because I'm trying to talk my way into it so that I can relieve the stress of coming on here. But another quote that I stumbled across getting ready for this podcast was, when you focus on God, circumstances lose their power, not because the circumstances disappear, but because they don't own your nervous system anymore. And I saw that on Instagram a week ago, right when I was starting to prep for this podcast. And at the time, I was praying to God, what am I going to do on the podcast? I have no idea what I'm going to talk about on the podcast. What is going to make me relevant? Why do people want to hit play? Why do they want to come and listen to my show? And just all of the things. I feel like when I'm opening up my mind to do God's work, just comes, just happens. And I feel like that has been very loud to me over the last year. The more I dive into prayer, the more I dive into God's word, the more I dive into anything serving, it just happens. The good stuff happens. It's like my client telling me. So I called him to tell him that we had our third offer, and he said, Kendra, I got to tell you this. I prayed heavily I was like, listen, you can't make it up. It's just God. It's the God stuff. It's crazy. But bringing it all back together, I think a lot of high capacity women confuse noise for leadership. And we have to know everything. We need to have an opinion. We need to be engaged. And I think what I have found is actually guarding my spirit has been leadership. It has helped me show up for the people around me tenfold. I feel more grounded spiritually, steadier professionally, clearer structurally, and even stronger in my relationship. And I'm looking right now for the Psalms verse from the very beginning because, of course, I lost my notes. But unless the Lord builds the house, the builder's labor is in vain. Psalms 127:1. I'll keep my eyes on him, not shaken. Unless he builds it, I won't force it. I have been able to let go of things in a more timely manner and also make decisions in a more timely manner because I have just let my heart be more open to my prayer and to my quiet and to discernment. So what happened here, the whole way this podcast came into existence is 2 weeks ago. I was talking to my admin team and I said, guys, I feel like I'm coming out of hibernation. I feel like I've been resting and it's time to get back to work. And it's so crazy to me because even during December, January, wow, it was 3 months. It was really 3 months. Now, what's crazy is my team, which thanks to Stacy on my team because she had 2 closings, but my team was still top 5 in my office. And if you haven't heard me toot my horn about my office, we are the largest office in Central Ohio, 480 agents, Keller Williams Consultants, Dublin, Grove City, and Marysville. They're also a sponsor of our show today, so I'll go into that. But in my season of quiet, I didn't stop working. I still showed up. Several classes at my office, Josh Uminski, Dana Gentry, I listen to a Gary Keller podcast. If you don't know these names, it's because they're real estate people, Keller Williams people, and definitely Central Ohio. Dana Gentry is our operating partner. She's got several offices between Kentucky and here, Midwestern. But I had an epiphany. I was at, maybe it was Dana and Linda McKissick. Anyway, if you're not in real estate, those names are irrelevant. But Dana and Linda have a life and everything in life, everything in real estate podcast. And you should definitely listen to it because it's fantastic. That's actually what I listen to when I'm trying to quiet my mind to get ready for my podcast. But it was listening to my office and our education and the MREA, which is Millionaire Real Estate Agent. There's also a podcast, but it was that when I was like, you know what? If it's not broke, don't fix it. And if it's broke, fix it. And what I had realized during all of my quiet is that what I was doing for my real estate team wasn't working. So all of these podcasts and all of these meetings that I was attending, I started to realize that it wasn't burnout. It was training. I was training for a new season of growth, not resting, not burnout. It was a quieter season with a different objective. It was a nervous system reset. It was vision sharpening, which is actually one of the exercises I did, was a vision board. I should have another podcast on that because it's right here on my wall. And it's something else. I'm excited for my 26 vision board. But my winter was root growth. I was deepening my own personal calling. And that's where I do want to get personal. I was so nervous about the podcast. I didn't realize that I was launching my podcast during this quiet season of mine. Before I started the podcast and knowing it wasn't going to be a real estate podcast, I didn't want it to feel or seem like a distraction. I didn't want it to dilute my real estate authority. But one thing I have learned from Dana Gentry, who's one of my coaches as well, calling doesn't cancel your career. It clarifies it. That is huge. And I think this calling, the podcast, got me so more in tune with where I needed to be spiritually so that I could lead better with my clients, with my team, with my family, with my kids, personally and professionally. So here's where the season produced something tangible. And this did come from all of the sessions with Dana and Gary and the MRE podcast and all of the things in my real estate world. We were getting, my real estate team, 25 to 40 online inquiries per month for our listings, for buyers, and I literally just couldn't keep up. We were missing opportunities because I wasn't able to show up for everything. And it wasn't a capability issue, it was a bandwidth issue. And the one thing that I know from professional leadership is growth without structure creates leakage. And we were leaking opportunities left and right. And not only that, but I was spending money on it, a lot of money on it. I already had someone, Tess, she's great. I already had someone dedicated to handling the logistics around the transactions on the team. But what I didn't have was a dedicated person to help onboard our new clients and to be the face of helping you get your appointment scheduled and helping with your intake forms so that it can be seamless and smoother for everybody. And then, of course, me or one of the agents on my team fill in the gaps there. And then you go back to Tess, who helps with the logistics around getting the property transaction closed. And I've already lost, like I said, I don't want to say lost because some of them left, some of them I excused, but I had already moved through 5 people in the creation of this team. I was, before bringing someone else on, I wanted to be cautious about who it was, and I wanted to follow the systems. We have actually a personality assessment, and I swear by it. I've been trained to swear by it, so it could be that my training is biased, but it literally says, "Connect the dots," and then it's like, "You're an empathetic person, but you anger quickly," and it's like, "What? I just connected 4 dots. How did you know?" But at any rate, it's a Keller Williams personality assessment, and I had this acquaintance, well, she's a friend, but from a group that I'm in, and she just scored off the charts for exactly what I needed, for that person to be the first line of communication from submitting an inquiry online on my website to finding a property. And I just love this so much because I prayed about it. I was quiet. I listened. I was exposed to all of these seminars and educational things that kept telling me, you need to hire someone. You need to hire someone. You need to hire someone. And I just didn't want to keep building something big that can't hold people well. And I started to lead with my business from my God space, from knowing that my business is to help other people live a great life, but also God first. And that's me leading God first, not me saying all my clients have to be God first. That would be unreasonable. But hopefully, I get the chance to invite them to this podcast where they can find it for themselves. But back to Psalms 127:1. If the Lord is building the house, I don't get to build it in panic. And I feel like my new hire, Brittany, that was an opportunity that came to me from this season, from being quiet, from listening, from shutting out the noise and letting my leadership root into my own faith. So for me, winter was not inactivity, it was root growth. I thought God was giving me rest and he was really sharpening my focus. He was training me to be present with my kids, to detach from the frenzy, to guard my peace, and to refine my attention. And that doesn't mean that I'm pulling away from social media or from real estate or from the podcast. I'm just allowing the noise to be softer and protecting my peace with what I'm putting in front of my eyes. One of the other quotes that actually came from Instagram was, significant calling requires significant preparation. And I really feel like my last 3 months have been the preparation for my next season. So, if you're in a season that feels quiet or different or slower, just ask yourself if it's rest or if it's refinement and what has access to your peace right now. Maybe the bravest thing you can do in this season is not react. Maybe it's focus. Maybe it's to turn down the noise so you can hear God clearly again. I'm learning that peace isn't passive, it's powerful.